Hello, all. Jeff Shaffer here, Chief Operating Officer and Vice President of IT and Analytics for a company in Cincinnati, Ohio. I'm also the adjunct professor at the University of Cincinnati, where I teach data visualization, one of the 30 Tableau Zen Masters selected by Tableau, and co-author on the Big Book of Dashboards. And today I'm coming from you from a hotel room in Columbus, Ohio, at the Women in Analytics Conference, which is a amazing conference, and if you have a chance, you should check it out.
Jeff, great to be back online with you. And joining us as our special guest, this is very exciting, is our partner in crime, Mr. Andy Cotgreave. Andy.
Hello, can you hear me?
Wonderfully.
You can, excellent. Yes, it's great to be here with you too. I'm Andy Cotgreave, Technical Evangelist, Senior Director at Tableau. Essentially, I've been at Tableau for 8 years and have been using Tableau for over 11. I'm a columnist for the InfoWorld and Analytics Professional of the Year. And yeah, there's just 3 things. I think that's good enough. Anyway, great to be here. Back to you.
I am Steve Wexler. I'm the founder, principal, and sole employee of Data Revelations. I was Tableau's Iron Viz champion back in 1957. I'm a 5-time Tableau Zen master, and I'm certainly very proud of those 2 accomplishments. But in terms of data visualization, the 2 things I'm most proud of is being one of the co-authors of the Big Book of Dashboards. So something that we started doing. Let me explain a little bit. We say 2 data visualization experts or gurus duking it out, and we wanted to kind of present this thing as a knockdown, smackdown fight between 2 of us, or now among 3 of us. As it's delighted to have Andy joining us. In fact, as those of you who have attended this before, it really isn't us yelling or beating up on each other. It's more kind of like this. And we had wonderful discussions and debates and disagreements in writing the Big Book of Dashboards. And we tried to capture some of that in the author commentary of the book. And people said, boy, they just loved the discussions that we had, and we wanted to rekindle that. So the first 2 of these things, Jeff and I were discussing things in data visualization, and we were delighted to have Chris Love join us last time. And now the stars have aligned, and we're getting back to the kind of fervent, inspired, hopefully inspired discussions that we had among the 3 of us in writing the Big Book of Dashboards, with Andy back here with us. Jeff said maybe instead of thinking of it as 2 guys duking it out, it's 2 dogs fighting over a donut chart. Although I think we will agree about whether the donut chart is warranted or not. This is something we started doing, I think, the first time out. And one of us would come up with some data visualizations and not show who the author is, and then ask the other, or in this case, the other 2, to look at the things and guess, do you know who made this visualization? So, Jeff, I'm going to stop presenting at this point, and I'm going to ask you to share the screen, and hopefully I will not embarrass myself too much. Here's what we're going to do also is that Andy and I will pledge not to look in the chat window. But if people want to guess who the author is after Jeff shows this, you can put that and you can guess that in the chat window. I'm looking at participants as much as I would like help. And Jeff, take it away.
Will do here.
I'm very nervous about
See my screen?
Not yet. And I don't see you moving either. There we go. Whoa, okay. That was
The Matrix.
Yes.
All right. Well, first up, I found this one.
Is this from Makeover Monday? Can I ask this? No, they didn't do DNA.
I believe it was Makeover Monday, yes.
Yeah.
Wow. Decoding the DNA of good government. And
I see. I don't know. It's got that nice crispness that Adam Crahan might do, or even Pooja, but I don't think they're as active.
I'm seeing the dark background stuff, and that's I'm thinking the plural site conspiracy.
See, I knew you would do that. That's why I picked this one specifically. I'll give you guys a hint. It's somebody who had been out of the community for a while, who was very prominent and kind of disappeared for a little bit and popped back up.
It's not
Chris.
Is it? Or go ahead.
I looked at chat. I'm sorry. Yes.
I was going to say Shine.
And that's
Shine.
what Chris said.
Very good. Yeah, you got it. Shine. Good
Shine
job.
won Iron Viz a few years ago with a fantastic piece of work, which was beautiful in its elegant simplicity, proving that you don't have to do crazy stuff to win Iron Viz.
And Jeff, thank you for the little hint about someone that had been out of the limelight for a bit and now is back. I'm grateful.
No problem.
Yeah.
All right. Well, here's another one.
Whoa. Hang on. Surely that's not built in Tableau, right?
That is not built in Tableau.
Okay. Well, I see Italian inspiration in that.
Yeah, so do I, and I've got a may I guess at this point, or should we
Sure.
banter a little bit? Well, it is in fact music, but the use of the different rows or columns in this thing, and if it is not this person is certainly inspired by this person. It looks a lot to me like Georgia Lupi.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good job.
Yeah, it's got everything. It's got her nice color style. It's got those lovely looping arrows. It looks very. It just makes me calm looking at it.
Yeah.
Now you realize Andy already started, the afternoon for somebody because he said, surely this isn't built in Tableau, and Chris Love is on this call. So, Chris Love has got this half built already, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Somebody will, I'm sure.
Yeah, there's a thought bubble, which is challenge accepted.
Yeah. We need, I believe we need a templatized way of doing curvy arrow annotations.
I agree with you.
That would be nice if somebody can just turn that into a template. That'd be good.
All right. Well, I'm sure you're aware that two people have kicked off a new Dear Data project, and so you probably know who those two are, but can you guess which card is by who?
Wow. Okay. So you're referring to Ann Jackson and Sarah Bartlett, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And oh boy, this is well, I'm going to let our guest today.
Good pass. Good pass.
Go
I'm
out on a
wondering
list.
if there's an accidental alphabetical sorting, so I could just guess Anne on the left and Sarah on the right. I don't know why, but I do think it is Anne on the left.
And I think it's the other way around.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
You did the reverse alphabet. Excellent. That's the.
All right. Well, I did throw in this one last night.
Whoa.
Oh.
From a Sports Viz Sunday. I can't follow the chat window without you guys seeing my screen. So
right. Background, transparent backgrounds. What's it actually showing? Number of medals. Weird. It's clever.
So what is it? Where they are at a certain point? How many medals? Number of medals.
The lane divider shows the number of medals, doesn't it? But what's the dark bar in the center of the swim lane? What's that number of?
I think that's the span of years from the y-axis, showing what years they were swimming.
Oh, well.
Wow.
Well done on this. So this is unlikely to be correct, but I just remember a number of years ago, Roddy doing a viz on Michael Phelps, and I'm wondering if he's revisiting it.
I thought Roddy too.
I forgot about Rodney's Michael Phelps viz. Yeah, this was actually done by Simon.
Simon. Well, I was looking at Sports Viz Sunday, and that's you could throw the dart at Simon, and you'd almost be guaranteed to be right.
I think
nice.
that's really a lovely job here.
All right. Well, I guess I'm going to go first on things that delighted us in Viz. First, Andy made the tour of all things Silicon Valley. I think you hit every big Silicon Valley company out there, didn't you, Andy? And ran into one of my former students, Angie Chen, who was my TA for a while, and she's now working at Apple, and ran into Andy. And I thought it'd be fun to just show her Dear Data postcard from class many, many years ago. She did a hand sewn postcard of the colors in her closet, her wardrobe. That was the topic, and it was really a really cool card. So shout out to Angie, and she texted me to say hello. I also saw this one. This was Sports Viz Sunday by Spencer, who's one of the leaders of the Sports Viz Sunday efforts. And this is just a really great Viz. I saw this, and it was also part of the Iron Quest. I think he submitted it maybe for that.
Yes,
but,
because I almost showed this as well in the things that delighted. So continue.
Yeah, so I mean, I just love the color and design of this, designing to a grid and great use of color. Now, Spencer lives like 2 blocks from my house, so I'm going to give him a little bit of grief on this. And after all, our topic is critiquing Vizes today, so I'm just going to tell him, it's not quite lined up. My OCD is kicking in. I just, those floating tiles or whatever he did there. I added this one in the deck just because last night, I believe it was, Matt Chambers hit 1 million views on Tableau Public with this visualization, and just stuck out to me. And I want to give a shout out to this one because, we talk about in our workshops about engagement. You don't have to build crazy charts with curvy lines to get people to look at your visualization. This is just simple, right? Bar charts, really. And shout out to Matt for that one. He did
great
one
work
that we feature in our workshop. He did one on the Mayweather McGregor, and again, a very simple visualization that if anybody's tracking on that, that's almost at 1 million vises. He's about 3/4 of the way there on that one too. So great job there. This other one I wanted to show, I'm going to flip over to just a quick video. It was the Financial Times who visualized the yield curve with music. And so I'm going to just jump out of here for a second. Sorry for the screen here. And I'm going to just show a quick video.
Hey,
on
Jeff,
that.
I'm just going to mention your camera seems to be frozen. Fortunately, the pose is not awkward.
These days, you can make music from anything. I'm going to show you how to take 100,000 numbers and turn them into something musical. This is the mysterious music of the yield curve. It's a chart that analysts use frequently to predict what might happen to the economy. And it's actually quite a simple chart. The y-axis just shows the interest rate, and the x-axis shows us for each bond what its maturity date is. With the yield curve animating so quickly, it can be difficult to remember how it's traveled over time. So one of the other things that we can do is introduce some ghosting of outlines from these peak inversions, so we can remind ourselves of where the yield curve has been at different points. This generates an animation of about 3.5 minutes, and it's eerily silent. So could we actually use the data to produce sound as well as a visual? That's where this process of data sonification comes into play. And in the case of this inversion from 1980, you can notice that the overall pitch of the yield curve is higher because the yields are very high. They're up at 15% at this point in time. And all the bass drum is going to do is it's synchronized to the month. So when you hear a bass drum, the gap between the bass drum is 1 calendar month, and you can see that's perfectly synchronized to the date on the screen.
Did you guys saw that when it first
that's
came
amazing. There's been some other really exciting stuff in making sound from data, and I'm going to have to try and dig out the links to find the one that I remembered. Jeff, you and I were talking about one yesterday, which is a not safe for work topic. I'll just send a tweet out about that one, but it's quite an avant-garde sound.
So another one that caught my attention, a doctor friend actually sent this to me first, and then it kind of made the rounds in the DataViz community, but a research paper that's interactive and being able to interact with elements of the research paper, changing the confidence intervals or interacting with the data in some other way. I thought that was really fun and really kind of exciting. Kind of gives a new element to a static PDF, being able to interact with the data real time right in the research paper, and all that code is actually available on GitHub.
That's cool. Can I say something about this?
Yeah, please.
Academic papers are so my issue with this is it's clearly a great innovation, but academic papers, but it's a mix of an old paradigm and a new paradigm, right? I try and read academic papers on a smartphone or on a tablet, and that 2-column format is just an absolute pain because I want to zoom in and read 1 column's width of content. So navigating an academic paper in a 2-column format just feels totally archaic. So as ideas like this develop, I would just love to see academia fit to a 1-column paradigm, because 2 columns is great for print, but it's terrible for on screen.
Yeah, or make it responsive so that when it's on a mobile device, it kicks over to 1 column, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, and then the
excuse me, hey,
sorry.
Jeff, if I might, it wasn't one of the authors of that interactive paper, Matthew Key. He was one of the presenters at Tapestry Conference, which is a great conference, and when it comes up again, people should look into attending that. But he gave a great talk on showing uncertainty in data, and I think he was one of the people responsible for that, so definitely worth looking at.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the last one I wanted to show, I think, was part of Andy's content. And do you want me to share the video first, or do you have it? You have it queued up, I guess.
Am I sharing my screen now?
You are.
Yep. I was going to talk about 2 things that delighted me. I actually didn't build a slide with the video on it, unfortunately. Oh, but I can click to it, can't I? So this is John Byrne Murdoch's bar chart race, which is a really nice way of showing data change over time.
I have a video, Andy. If you want to stop sharing, I can show the video.
Tell you what, I will. No, because I wanted to mention something about the criticism that's happened on this.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so we'll go back to the video in a minute. It's really innovative, as we're going to see in the video in a moment. One of the things that I find fascinating is that this thread column, thread on Twitter and on Reddit, has exploded, and people said, "Oh, why should it be a bar chart?" And it really reminded me of something I wrote several years ago, that anytime an innovative visualization exists, the probability that somebody says it should have been a line chart approaches 1 as time progresses. And I did see that criticism somewhere on Reddit. I actually took the data and tried to build a line chart with it. It just doesn't have the drama that the bar chart race has. So there's been, for those who use Tableau who are on this webinar today, there's been some really interesting ideas around trying to recreate these using the page shelf in Tableau. And it's been quite interesting. Again, we'll share the link to this afterwards. Before we go back to the video, the other thing that's delighted me is this book by Caroline Criado Perez. This book is blowing my mind away. It's about the data bias in the world designed for men, and it's just a relentless onslaught of researched, footnoted examples of how the world just favors men and not women, whether it's in work, whether it's in politics, in clothing, every aspect of life. It's absolutely amazing, and I just recommend everybody goes and reads it, because it's something else.
One of the quotes from the conference today at the Women in Analytics was, "Data is a reflection of society. If your data is biased, it's because society is."
Yeah, indeed. So just it's a great book. Really enjoying it.
Well, let me share the video on the bar chart races real quick.
You're looking at a bar chart race showing which cities had the largest populations at any time over history. We're going to start the race at 1500 AD. In the early 1500s, most people lived in the east, either the east of Europe and North Africa, or the east of the world itself in India and China, two countries that will be a regular occurring feature as we go on.
All right.
Yeah, they're great.
Jeff, are you going to be showing something else?
Or share my screen and
great.
Pop right back there.
Because I've got a couple of things that delighted.
You want to go ahead and do those, and then we'll talk about critique.
Yep. So thank you. So you had mentioned Iron Quest, which is an initiative from Sarah Bartlett to encourage people to participate in Tableau's Iron Viz competition. And she wrote a wonderful blog post about why this would be worthwhile. You don't have to win. You don't have to compete. You don't have to be one of the finalists. You will get better at your craft. You will learn a lot of useful things. And you may publish a few visualizations that will have an impact on people. And each month or so, there's a different goal. In this case, it was around business dashboards, and you'd shown the one from your colleague in Cincinnati. Oh, I'm blanking on his name. Last name is Bauk. Spencer, yes. Mm-hmm. I thought it was quite wonderful, and I particularly like the use, as I did here, of see the change of it. Look at the central, east, and south and west regions, what I call purposeful bands, purposeful big-ass numbers. The number isn't just there, but we're also seeing it within the context. And I'm enjoying seeing people use this technique and using it intelligently. And it reminds me of a great blog post from Adam McCann, 20 ways to visualize KPIs and big ass numbers. And he'll be the first to say some are, probably more valuable and provide additional insight more than others. But I thought he just was a wonderful blog post, different ways of doing these things. And the three of us have had this discussion that we wish we had done more to call out this technique in the book. There are some dashboards that I had made and said, oh my gosh, I really wish I had had some big ass numbers up at the top, not just to take up screen real estate, but to hear the headlines, but also to explain the context, to decode the color, and so on. So encourage you to look at some of that work. Hold on, let me cite this particular author. This was from Sharista Ali Khan, and definitely check out Dueling Data and Adam McCann's work.
Should we write the big book of bands?
And you know what? It'll take no time at all. We'll just use like 120 point fonts, and we'll be at 150 pages in no time flat. So we should be absolutely fine with that.
I like that sales dashboard for the fact that it only uses one color as well. Quality.
I'm totally in agreement with you there. Well cited, Andy.
Mm-hmm.
See, here we are, wildly disagreeing with each other.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. We were supposed to be arguing, weren't we? All right, I'll try and be more argumentative.
Yeah.
Well, now comes the arguing part, right?
Excellent.
The meat of the topic today is critique in data visualization, and I guess I volunteered to take point on this and talk about some points that I think are important when we talk about critique in data visualization, and see if we can get my co-authors to agree or if they disagree.
And also, Jeff, the people should feel free to chat and agree, disagree, add points as you go through.
Please do, yes.
Yeah, please do.
So I guess my first point is I think we have to take the bad with the good. We are out there posting our visualizations in the community, and it doesn't seem right to me to have a system where there's open praise, where we can click the like button as much as we want, but somehow close critique. Twitter, we have a heart button, and Facebook, and we can like all these things and we retweet these things. There is no dislike button like there is on YouTube, for example, if you don't like a video. And then even at that, you're just kind of clicking up or clicking down. It doesn't really give you the mechanism for why, right? What do you like about it, or what don't you like about it? I think that it benefits us all to have that sort of open dialogue, because otherwise we're going to be in the everything is awesome camp, right? Everything we post, anybody puts out, it's always awesome. And I don't think that's fair, because I think we need to critique ourselves and our colleagues and our community, so that we don't just have a plus everything, and not really talk about the downside of some of those things. I guess I'll let my co-authors jump in there.
Yeah, I think I know you're going to come on to some of the nuances here. Certainly, everything isn't awesome, and everything we see online isn't always awesome. But there are assumptions we might make as a person who makes a critique, which might be unfair to the person who is receiving your criticisms. But I think we'll explore a little bit more of that in a moment.
Okay, I'm curious. I'm not exactly sure what you mean, but I'll let you hold off and come back into this.
All right. So the specific example I'm thinking of is if somebody has just been using Tableau for 2 weeks and they publish something, and then me, who's been using Tableau for 11 years, goes, "Yeah, come on, why did you put the pie chart on that? And why did you use 25 colors?" That is incorrect and inappropriate.
And I tend to agree with you. And I used to be kind of, I think I behaved inappropriately and would beat up people who were just starting out and things like that. Margaret in the chat window is saying, "How about privately critiquing?" I tend to do that much more. And also, who am I to even contact this person? But if they publish something and put it out in the wild, if they are new in the field, I will tend to do it privately. I will not try to avoid public humiliation. If they are someone who purports to be an expert and is giving workshops or books or presentations, and they do something that I think is just awful, I think the gloves are off, and you're out there as an expert. I'm going to criticize you, as I would expect if I do something that someone thinks is outrageous or stupid or off. I published it. I expect someone to criticize it.
And I think that's where I'm at is if you only criticize in private, then what you see in the public realm is only the positive things. And so then there's no community dialogue around that. And other people are just going to assume, oh, everybody liked this, and we're going to just make more of that.
Hey, Jeff, going with Andy's thing, instead of Andy, you saying, and I'm sure you've thought of this, and I know how you nurture people. You would never say, "Oh my God, what is this stupid pie chart with 17 colors?" You would say, "Hey, great first effort. I have some thoughts on this. Have you thought about maybe trying it this way?" And so it's out in public. Person's being criticized, but they're being nurtured, as opposed to, "Wow, what a lame chart."
Yeah, I think Laura's just said something that I was going to say. What's interesting, Steve, is I'd say some of your language that you've just used is like harsh, gloves off, lame, stupid, outrageous. We've got to be careful.
I agree.
How we frame the words, right? Because you're right. If an expert is out there and is putting work out there, then it is up for critique. But we can't, without knowing the intent, the audience, the literacy of the audience, and so many things, to go in guns blazing is the wrong approach. And I think most of the flare-ups I've seen is where just subtly incorrect words are chosen, and then boom, it can be one word that flips it from being well-received critique to something which can really upset the receiver.
Jeff, I want to make sure in case you forget, and you probably won't, why you're using that word critique and not a different one, but keep going.
Yeah. So the second thing that I thought of was my solution may not be better. So I think what often happens when I'm critiquing things, and this happens to me a lot, and I'm in front of students in a classroom, so I'm critiquing their work. I'm collaborating with people at the office, and we'll look at visualizations all the time. And this just happened to me last week at the office. Somebody created a visualization, and I looked at it. I really didn't think that was a good way of showing the data. I offered what I thought was going to be a better solution. And when we got to my solution, I had the same reaction. I didn't think that I solved anything better than the original. And we ended up going in a third direction just by exploring something because we weren't happy with where it was. And so I think this idea we talk a lot about in our workshops, iteration and collaboration, that the critique needs to be iterative and collaborative in its way, and not just right way, wrong way.
And yeah, Taylor Barker, great comment there about at least Facebook has multiple reaction buttons, whereas Twitter just has a like, right? The world of social media has revealed that text does not create nuance, or does not allow us to translate the nuances of our message to our audience.
So a couple examples of where I think dialogue has come out with a good product in the end was our last episode of Chart Chat, where we had Chris Love on, and we were talking about the population pyramid. And we kind of came, I think, to a conclusion that the population pyramid might be better when it's trying to show a generation moving through time, but certainly not a great chart when you're trying to compare the men to the women and the gap between the men and the women. And that iteration really achieve something different that we talked about on the last episode. And Steve, you and I, we've seen this over and over again with various things from the book on the left-hand side when we were talking about jitter and opportunities to improve on jitter versus the error bars that we looked at.
Yep. And variety, the going to talk about this quite a bit, but people chiming in and saying, "Hey, that's interesting. Have you thought about this?" And going to talk about the costs of having a large amplifier. People who have a lot of followers, but one fellow in particular, Dan Zvinka out of Romania, he's on a bunch of occasions has weighed in, and he's changed my approach to stuff. And it's the iteration that someone critiquing, making suggestions for improvement, and I'm very grateful for it. And I think the two of anytime I have anything that's high stakes, I'm going to run it by other people to look at it. I don't think, wow, this is just brilliant and it's great, and everyone's going to tell me how wonderful it is. It's, what do you think of this? Are there ways to improve it? But I think the main thing Jeff and you and Andy are talking about is some of the harshness that can sometimes come out, and we don't realize how hurtful it can be.
So my other thought on this was the critique's not just about the creator. I don't think it should be where we look at a viz and we tear it apart or talk about what works or doesn't work as it's only about the person who did it, trying to make them better. I think we should look at this as a broader community where we can all learn from this. And that goes back to the iteration. If somebody calls something out, then it can open up dialogue for other people in the community to participate in that dialogue, rather than just sort of a teacher-student sort of thing that might happen in a classroom. I think about literature, music, art, movies, restaurants, teacher reviews. Critique is kind of built into a lot of our culture, right? Whether Steve, you mentioned, when we talked about this first, you mentioned some of these are paid services. I tried to think of things maybe where they weren't paid services, like art or literature. Certainly people have views on their favorite movies or their favorite books or their favorite restaurants, but maybe even beyond that, you see a piece of art that you like or don't like, you sort of have a reaction to that. And I think the benefit of having a broader discussion about that, as opposed to I just don't like that. That's terrible. I think if we can open up the dialogue about that, we all improve.
Well, Jeff, remember, when we first discussed this, you made a point of using the word critique and not criticism, and that I wanted to make sure you can you explain why, your reason for that?
I just listen to the word criticism kind of has a harsh tone to it. I realize there can be positive criticism, but I think there's a connotation to the word that maybe is negative to me. Maybe that's just me. But critique seems like it's not as harsh a word as criticism.
I agree.
But in a world of social media, the recipient may not be thinking of that distinction when they see a fragilely worded response.
That is true. I also, as I was reflecting on this, thinking about, critique's part of the copyright law. We are allowed in the U.S. to pull from work with the idea, the underlying rationale, and a great quote from this attorney, that the rule is that the public reaps benefits from your review. That's kind of the whole purpose of the fair use. So I thought that was kind of an interesting thing too, is that it's kind of built into the structure because we do it, right?
Yeah, some good comments on the chat. Renee saying most people who are publicly posting vids are putting themselves out there for critiquing. Yeah, you're right. I think if you're going to publish, ultimately, if you are going to put something on social media or on Tableau Public, and then assume the critiques are off the table, then that's probably not the best assumption. Chris Love asks, is rebuild to critique necessary? I'm assuming this is referring to how sometimes people say, well, if you're not building this stuff yourself and you're not taking this data set yourself and building your own, then you're not in a position to critique. If that's the case, I don't think you need to be rebuilding things in order to critique it. I think, again, you need to be mindful of others' time and effort and intent, but I don't think you need to rebuild to critique. Steve and Jeff,
I'll jump in there, Andy. I couldn't agree with you more on that one. I probably have a little bit of a stronger stance. I've had, I think I counted 1,650 students at the University of Cincinnati. They each have 5 assignments in their class. You do the math. I've graded a lot of assignments and critique a lot of work. And to be put in a position where you want to limit that by saying, well, you can't really offer a critique unless you take the time to redesign it or show an example.
Yeah.
That's going to limit people from doing it because they just don't have the time to do it, especially busy professionals who are out there doing other things. So I think it does us a disservice if we don't listen to people who have that talent, just because they don't have the time to spend with the data. And we've all spent a lot of time with data, as you know. It can suck time, right?
Yes. Yeah. And again, we've got Lucy, Renee, and Anne talking about constructive criticism, ignoring the trolls as well. They're all great points in the chat.
And Kat Cleary is
right to my points number 4 and 5. I think you're finishing my talk for me in the chat window. That's great. So the next one is 2 points. One, how we deliver the critique. So the person who is making the critique, and the other side is how we receive it. I think that how we deliver it is what we really should be spending more time talking about, not whether we should do it or not, how it should be done. And so I thought I'd pull a short story from my class. This is a demonstration that I give in class on this very topic. This comes from a real world scenario. This is about, call it 2012, I think is the year. This chart showed up on a website in Cincinnati on our Hamilton County Auditor's webpage. And Hamilton County is the county that I live in, and the auditor is the one who handles all the real estate taxes and record keeping. And so in this case, the blue team is the one that created this chart. That's the Hamilton County Auditor's Office. And they're comparing the red team, which is all of the county employees, to themselves. And we can see the, kind of looking at the chart here, the blue team's going down. I guess that's the message that they're trying to get across here. And the red team up there comparing the number of employees. And of course, doing data viz, somebody sent me an email, said, hey, you should see this chart that's on the Hamilton County Auditor's website. So I took a look at this chart. Obviously, it's got, loads and loads of problems for, a variety of reasons. The axis doesn't start at 0, so the bar chart comparison is very difficult, and 3D and overlabeled. And, we could sit and critique this probably all day and find all kinds of things wrong with it. I sat down over lunch that day. I played with the data. It was all labeled. There's one good use of over labeling, because I had all the data. But so I put all the data in an Excel spreadsheet. I played with it. I didn't spend more than a half hour on this, wrote up an email of the things that I thought were wrong with this chart, and I sent it back. Now, when I was playing with it, I kind of got the impression we want to make these comparisons over time. A line chart, sort of came to mind, and I said, okay, well, let me look at these as line charts. And this still didn't get me where I wanted to go. I kind of wanted to compare the red team with the blue team, sort of like right on top of each other. And they're different units, right? One's sort of in hundreds and the other's in thousands. So I really had two options. I could, put them all as like a % of employees, or I decided to put them on a dual axis. And I started the clock at 1990, compared the employees, put a dotted line there, and sure enough, easy to see that the blue line's going down. They have a staff reduction of 56.5%. Meanwhile, the red team, they have only a reduction of 7.5%, but it was only during the financial crisis. And just to fast forward through this story, I sent this chart to the Hamilton County Auditor's Office with a write-up of what I thought didn't work in their original chart, why this chart was probably better. I look back on it 7 years, I'd probably still make some changes to it today. Didn't think anything of it. About 2 hours later, I get an email from the Hamilton County Auditor's Office. It says, you are clearly better than this than my staff. Can I use your chart on my website? I said, sure, no problem. So this chart becomes the front page of the Hamilton County Auditor's webpage. Now, I moved on and didn't think anything of it. About 2 weeks later, my wife is a musician. She's a voice teacher. She teaches lessons out of her house. She has a lady that comes to the house for lessons, been coming to the house for years and years and years for voice lessons. And Susan comes in, says to my wife, is your husband Jeff Shaffer? And my wife says, yeah, that's my husband. Does he teach at the University of Cincinnati? Yeah, he does. And she says, well, he redesigned my husband's chart on the Hamilton County Auditor's webpage. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, that could have went really poorly, right? Like that could have been, had I written a scathing letter to the Hamilton County Auditor's Office and said, I don't know what kind of crack employees you got who are creating charts on your website, but they need to get their act together. That would have been a completely different conversation, right? And probably not had the same reception than the email that I wrote that was a little more positive about it all. So that was the story I thought I would share, just kind of a fun story of real life that happened to me. I tell my students, they're sitting in a class listening about data visualization. We're all on a chart chat, because we're interested in the topic. We learn and we study this stuff. We've read the books. That doesn't mean everybody else has. And this person who created this chart probably didn't have any data visualization training, probably didn't read a book on best chart practices, and maybe Excel just served them up some bad chart decisions. So I think the how we approach the critique really should be at the center of our conversation.
I did the same thing about 8 years ago when I was working in higher education and I wrote a blog post about how one of the UK education consultants or bodies reports were terrible. And that was when I was blogging for the Data Studio, which then became Interworks in the UK. And the head of the Data Studio started getting really upset emails from this organization saying, who the hell are you to write such scathing critique without knowing what the hell you're talking about? Just to counter that delivering it with a sledgehammer does not work. So we actually turned that into a sales opportunity for Tableau, because Mel Stevenson managed to turn it around to a positive situation, but it certainly was not the best start to a sales opportunity.
I'm going to jump ahead here to the last point, and let Steve jump in here. How we handle the critique. So somebody has critiqued our work. I think this is another piece that we don't really talk about. And I think we need to have a little thicker skin with that. We need to not take it so personal. It can feel personal, I know. But at the end of the day, I think if we can brush that off, realize that if we put something in the public realm, it's going to happen. Especially we're seeing more and more visits now on Reddit. The Reddit community can go crazy. I've posted some stuff recently on some other social media channels. And when you're outside even of the data viz community, you're getting people who aren't even commenting about the data visualization itself. They're commenting about something else. So I think that's another point that we should talk about. I had a real world example of this. I created this viz last year on the women in American orchestras, and did a blog post about my trumpet professor. She was the first woman to be appointed as a trumpet player in the major symphony orchestras, and has an amazing history. And if you look at these numbers, it's astonishing, because you have somebody like the strings or the harp, where a woman is much more predominant in the American orchestras, but in the brass section, especially trumpet and trombone, you hardly see it. And even this is today's numbers, let alone back in the day when she was appointed to that position. And so I did this. I did it as a waffle chart. I made some very precise design decisions. I put a 50% line down the middle of it, and I shaded the area kind of to show the bar, of how many there are, but the dot for each individual percent. And when this got posted to Twitter, the very first comment that I got back was, a simple bar chart would be better. And that was it. Now you think about that, you're like, okay, how much time do you spend to do something like that? You create something that could, that doesn't happen in 5 minutes. You do a lot of time, and writing a blog post takes hours and all these sorts of things. And then when you get a comment like that back, and I thought to myself, it's kind of funny, because I've made that comment before, right? I've told students when they make a waffle chart, a bar chart would probably be better for a comparison like this. Now, in this particular data set, what I was encountering was a problem where you had the bars were so small that when I started to put them on a page, the story that I was trying to tell is getting hidden, sort of at the y-axis. It was kind of disappearing. Somebody else suggested, well, just flip it around and just show 97%. And I'm like, well, yeah, I'm making a viz about women, and I'm going to show the number of men. That doesn't seem like a good idea. So anyway, I ended up, sort of doing it like that, where you could compare a lot of red to a little red. Thought I got my point across. And then recently I had this example. I posted this viz. I just did this viz a couple weeks ago, and it's about the age of the homes in Cincinnati. And I posted it on Nextdoor. It's an app here where you talk with your neighbors. I thought they'd probably appreciate that. I did, you can drill down into the streets and even down into the houses, and it has a tooltip, and I even animated it so that you could see the homes over time, year by year. One person commented about the color, and I really struggled on this with the color, by the way. And Andy just talked about getting in the mind of the designer. I would usually use a sequential color scheme or a diverging color scheme. None of them really popped out what I was trying to show on the map, and I ended up I would never use a color scheme that was diverging and categorical, but I ended up going with that because that was the best. It seemed like the best way to make it pop on the map with the color that I wanted. And so I did that. I posted it on Nextdoor, and the first comment I got, interesting, but wrong. No way our row houses were built over a 50-year period. They were built in 1873, not 1865 or 1910. And the kicker is I was just using data from the auditor's office, just what is on record with the county. And the county does have 1865 and 1910. So I'm just relying on that. So just an example of, you're going to get these comments. We just have to accept those comments, open up the dialogue as best we can, and kind of accept that that's going to happen. But I think if we put it in the public realm, we have to kind of expect that that's what's going to end up with our dialogue.
Amen. Yeah. I sort of recommend anybody who ever receives a comment that says a bar chart would have been better, just mentally replace it with a bar chart would have been different. And then you will continue.
Steve, I will turn it back over to you.
So thank you, Jeff. Oh, hold on a sec. Waiting. There we go. So the whole your symphony orchestra analysis, and I thought it was great. And I am always someone to say, let's go with the simplest, most straightforward things that people do well, comparing length or comparing the position from a common baseline. But I thought you were telling a more effective story with your waffle chart. And I wrote a blog post about this a number of years ago, where sometimes you're trying to get a visceral or emotional reaction to something, and there's better ways to convey that than the accurate comparison. And a few people beat me up about this, in particular a certain Stephen Few, that and I need to accept the criticism from him and others, although I maintain I think I'm making a fair point here, and that transitions to there are a lot of voices out in the data visualization space now, and a lot of very good voices, and people writing wonderful things, and can be kind of overwhelming to who should I follow, who should I be reading, who has good blog posts, etc. As more and more people start following your work and enjoying it, and paying attention to what you're doing, I think there's a greater responsibility that you need to do a good job, because you may mess people up. And I've been thinking about this a lot lately, like the cost of having a large amplifier. I don't have that many Twitter followers. The two of you have tens of thousands. It's amazing. But there are certainly a lot of people who read newsletters and the blog posts. I get a lot of traffic, etc. And as this happens, you need to realize that, congratulations, you now have a lot of followers, but there's a responsibility that comes with this, which is you better not mess up. And Jeff, you cited this particular example where the community was kind of giving me feedback on this. Took over a year for me to put this blog post together on displaying error bars with survey data. Now, the reason it took a year, there are several things that contributed to this. One is, laziness on my part. Two, lack of familiarity with the subject matter. And I got a lot of help from you, from Daniel Zvinka, from Anna Ford, from Ben Jones. They were great. And the third part was, if I screw this up, literally, I'm not exaggerating, a few thousand people are going to be sent down the wrong path and make mistakes. So I wanted to make sure that the math behind it, the approach behind it, the wording behind it was correct, because there are a lot of people that are now following. And it drives me nuts when I would see something like this. Now, until recently, this was Tableau's homepage. And that is a very pretty looking visualization. But I defy you to learn anything meaningful from this thing. So it would drive me nuts when essentially Tableau is saying, hey, this is our homepage. We think people should be making vizzes like this. Or this was something that was shown in front of 15,000 people at the Tableau conference. I think this is maybe 2016. And I think it's great to promote the work that partners are doing and cool insights and things like that. But I'm just not buying that 100% stacked bar chart. And if you're in front of 15,000 people and showing this thing, you're essentially saying, we think this is a good chart. Now, you're going to make mistakes, and I make more than most. And what should you do about them? And especially if you're kind of in this leadership position. So this is my most recent blog post, and I feel pretty good about it. I think I took a pretty even-keeled approach to this and suggested some things related to Tableau's annual Iron Viz competition. And I got a lot of very good feedback, and I got what I thought was fair feedback from Eva Murray. And this is what we wrote. I do have an issue with your article on the comments, though. Every reference to contestants is he or him. Why do people assume that it will be men? Sure, there's been a great deal of diversity. There hasn't been a great deal of diversity on stage lately, but let's not make conclusions in our choice of words. And few people came to my defense. I'm not sure it's defendable, but I looked at what I had written. And everything in the article itself was correct in the terms of gender. I then even looked at the Big Book of Dashboards and said, I try to be very aware of this. And in the book itself, we always said he or she, or him/her. And it was in one of the comments in particular. And I even remember writing this comment and thought it would be somewhat cumbersome if I had made this gender inclusive. But I think Eva was right. So here is the comment, and upon her telling me that, hey, I have a problem with this, I changed this and said, we can't have that assumption, we can't have that bias that's built into this thing. So this is the comment that I had back. But I would say I'm going to give a little bit of pushback, not on this, because I think her criticism was fair, but that what you do when someone points out something that may be wrong or can be improved, and instead of digging in your heels and saying, oh, I think that's silly or whatever. And Jeff, it came from one of the Makeover Monday initiatives from beginning of 2017. Now, I think Makeover Monday is great. It's an opportunity for people to look at how one person did a data visualization, get the common data set that supported that data visualization, and then come up with alternatives. Once in a while, there are data sets that really probably shouldn't be used for this type of analysis, where the cost of owning a house or apartment in New York was one example where, boy, there's data that's missing here, or the conclusions that people are making and that people are amplifying. In this case, this was data about the gender pay gap in Australia, and the 50 professions where the gap was just enormous, not a 10 or 15% gap that you often see in the United States, but something like a 250% gap. And the problem with it was, this was data, even though it was reliable data from the Australian government, you cannot be drawing those conclusions from this data set. And I just wish that the Makeover Monday mavens had said, you know what, this is a valid criticism. We probably shouldn't be doing this. We should probably, pull the visualizations that are based on this. So once or twice a year, something like that happens. So I agree with the criticism that was leveled on my comments, and I tried to fix it. But I would say, hey, Tableau, if you're showing something in front of 15,000 people, you want to make sure that you're essentially saying, this is what we think you should do. And if you're going to succeed with something like Makeover Monday, and it has succeeded and it's been great, if a mistake has been made, you want to make sure everyone who's following you recognizes the mistake and fixes the mistake. Just a couple little thoughts, couple of people that I think are deserving of larger amplifiers, and it's Myka and Dorian and Benoit. I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. These are both people out of Romania. They're both commenting on Twitter and LinkedIn, and holy crap, are they doing good work. So I'm just going to suggest, if you're looking for people to follow or want to see good work and thoughtful work and articulating ideas, I think they're just doing some astounding stuff. Coming soon, we're running a little bit late here, but I don't know if we're going to talk about this. These are things that are on my mind, the Iron Viz competition, and I do want to discuss the founding and popularity of the Data Visualization Society, something that Elijah Meeks and others have put together. At the closing of this, and I'm certainly going to want to hear some words from Andy and from Jeff, but resources and upcoming workshops and other cool things, please go to bigbookofdashboards.com, and it's where you can find recordings of Chart Chat. Jeff has been ridiculously attentive of getting the recordings up on YouTube and making sure the links are available at bigbookofdashboards.com, and the recordings of the 3 previous rounds will be there as well. Jeff, should I just leave the slide up here, or is there something you want to share?
I think you can leave that up and let Andy finish us out here.
Well, yeah, it's been great joining in. I love these debates. I do miss them. I think everybody who's attended, what do you want us to talk about? What are the topics that you think are hot and interesting and worthy of conversation? So, yeah, really enjoyed the conversations going on the chat as well.
Any thoughts on the large amplifiers, Andy?
Well, you're right. I mean, with great responsibility comes great.
With great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah, man,
Spider-Man. Wait a minute. Okay.
No, it's no. Well, yes, the genesis of that quote is actually quite disputed. Apparently, it was an agricultural minister in the UK, not even the king.
It was Voltaire.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't.
It wasn't really.
All right. Anyway.
Okay. Well, then I'm going to have to fix something that I published.
With great power comes great responsibility. Whoever the heck said it. Yes, it is incumbent on us all to be mindful of what we say and the way it will be received.
Wow, I got to find out that wasn't Voltaire. Thank you. But it was definitely Benjamin Parker, or Uncle Ben.
Yeah.
Yes, from Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Somebody gave you the investigator link quote, so we can study this after the webinar.
Oh, thank you.
There you go.
Right.
Kat Cleary, you had made a comment about Adam Grant and accepting criticism. I saw that in the window, and I got to meet Kat earlier this week. So thank you for your suggestion on looking at Adam Grant's stuff.
Brilliant.
Andy, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much. Thanks. And Jeff, we'll figure out when we're going to do this next month.
Yes, sir.
All right. Good night, all, or good afternoon, all.
Bye, everybody.